Have you ever wondered why a straw looks bent in a glass of water? In reality, the straw isn't bent at all, even though it looks like it is. What's happening here is something that's called refraction. The light is bending, which fools our sense of sight. The light at the top of the straw travels straight to the eye, while the light from the part that's underwater comes to the eye at a slightly different angle, making the straw look bent. Basically, our sense of sight is being fooled by what's called an optical illusion. But if our senses can be fooled so easily, how is it that we can rely on our senses to know anything at all? In the 1700s, René Descartes wondered the same thing, and he ended up totally changing how people understand the world around us. He was the first major figure in the philosophical movement known as rationalism, a method of understanding the world based on the use of reason as a means to attain knowledge. This ultimately set the foundation for modern science as we know it today. Besides being a philosopher, Descartes was also a writer and a mathematician. He ended up inventing the Cartesian graph, and it was thanks to him that we're able to use algebra and calculus to solve complex geometrical problems. Descartes figured that thinking was the sole aim, meaning, and purpose of living. Descartes lived in a time before science as we know it today. Knowing that we can't totally trust our senses to tell us true information about the world, he wanted to establish what might be certain knowledge as a stepping stone towards the ultimate pursuit of truth. His first step was to throw out everything he knew, even the evidence of his own senses, which he dismissed as unreliable. He would trust only that which was clearly and distinctly seen to be beyond any doubt, a process referred to as methodological skepticism or Cartesian doubt. Its purpose is to use doubt as a route to certain knowledge by finding those things which could not be doubted. Only then did he allow himself to reconstruct knowledge piece by piece so that at no stage could doubt creep back in. This would allow one to acquire a firm foundation of genuine knowledge and dispel any skepticism. He outlined 4 main rules for himself in his thinking. Never accept anything except clear and distinct ideas. Divide each problem into as many parts as needed to solve it. Order your thoughts from the simple to the complex, and always check thoroughly for oversights. The clearing of all these previously held beliefs put Descartes at the absolute ground zero. From here, he sets out to find something that lies beyond all doubt. Ultimately, the one thing that he believed he could be certain of was that he was doubting, leading to his famous phrase, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Descartes came to realize that, although he could not doubt that he had a body, he could not under any circumstances doubt that he had a mind, which led him to conclude that the mind and the body were 2 very different and separate things. His belief, known as Cartesian dualism, proposed that the mind controls the body, but that the body also influences the otherwise rational mind, for example when people act out of passion, in a kind of 2-way interaction. During Descartes' time, it was believed that in order for something of complexity to exist, it must have come from something even more complex. So if a human has a perfection such as intelligence, then it must have been created by something of even greater intelligence, which must be God. A perfection like intelligence must exist because we can conceive of such a thing. In his classic argument, Descartes says, God is the most perfect being conceivable. It is more perfect to exist than to not exist. Therefore, God must exist. Descartes asked the question, How can we really know with certainty that the world around us is not being forced on us by some evil being? Since Descartes thought once that he was awake, when he was actually still sleeping, he realized that he could no longer rely on his senses to tell him that he was not still dreaming. So he comes to the conclusion that his senses, which can be fooled, can't be trusted, and that for all he knows, the rest of the world might be controlled by some evil being. Now, this argument is not meant to be taken literally, but is meant to demonstrate that the senses can be deceived, and therefore we cannot trust our senses to convey true information about the world around us. However, Descartes' idea that we may all be under the control of some evil power determined to deceive us is both frightening and kind of thought-provoking. Fans of The Matrix may recognize this concept.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real?
Descartes' evil demon comes to life in the Matrix films as the machines that force a seemingly pleasant virtual reality on humans in order to keep them under control while they harvest energy from their bodies. In the film, Morpheus tells Neo that intelligent machines have taken over the world and that when humans polluted the sky to cut off machines' solar power, the machines adapted by using enslaved human bodies as a power source instead. Just as Descartes believed that his dreams were real, humans who are plugged into the Matrix, a simulation of the world as it was in 1999, have no idea that their sensations are false and that their entire lives are merely an elaborate virtual reality being forced on them. Until Neo is pulled out of the Matrix, he has no idea that his life is just a virtual reality. Like Descartes, Neo eventually comes to understand never to take anything at face value, and to question the existence of everything around him, no matter how real it might seem. Once Neo decides to take the red pill and see the truth for himself, Morpheus tells him that everything he has ever known is just an illusion, that in reality, humans are being farmed for energy by machines, and live their entire lives surrounded by liquid in pods, with their brains being fed computer code designed to give them the illusion of living happy, ordinary lives.
This isn't real.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
Neo is actually living in a computer-generated dream world called the Matrix. The Matrix is based on one of Descartes' most important philosophical ideas, that doubt is the origin of wisdom, and that all of us need to think for ourselves. Descartes said, in order to seek the truth, it is necessary once in the course of our life to doubt, as far as possible, of all things. Descartes realized that the senses did not always match the reality, and he used something called the wax argument to demonstrate this. Our senses tell us that wax has a specific shape, texture, smell, etc. But when wax is brought near a flame, these characteristics change. Yet the same piece of wax remains. So we realize that we cannot understand wax through our senses. So Descartes became convinced that one must use one's mind rather than one's senses to obtain information about the world. This was an essential step forward in establishing a rational, scientific method for understanding the world around us. Descartes argued that the mental process of deduction is the only way to acquire real knowledge about the world. When Neo finally comes to understand that he can no longer trust his senses and must doubt everything around him. Only then can he start to use the power of his mind, to use reason and common sense to free him to see the truth as it really is, and use that knowledge as power. Ultimately, Descartes and Neo both came to understand the only way to attain knowledge is through the methodical use of reason and rational thought. Each problem that is solved becomes a rule, which in turn helps to solve other problems. And as the saying goes, the truth will set you free, whether we really live in the Matrix or not.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.